Over the course of the last weekend, Zenless Zone Zero has taken over my life. And I can't believe I'm saying that, because if you know me, you know that I haven't traditionally clicked with HoYoVerse's games. I tried Genshin Impact, I tried Honkai Star Rail, and they just didn't work for me. So what is it about Zenless Zone Zero that's different? I spent a lot of time thinking about this over the past couple of days as I've been just obsessively playing the game. I installed it on my phone, my PlayStation, and my PC. Anywhere that I can play games, I can play Zenless now. And that is not something that I expected to be saying. I was curious about the game, sure. When it was revealed and I saw that it was an action game, not like an RPG or any of these other things, I thought that that might be more up my alley, but I had no idea just how much. And so today I want to talk about the game itself, how it plays, and why it is that a free-to-play anime style game has gotten its hooks into me when that's not traditionally what I'm into. Not so much the anime side. I love anime games. I'm a huge anime fan, and that was probably the part of HoYoVerse's previous efforts that did appeal to me and got me to try them, but it's the gameplay here that's the star for me. I am absolutely enthralled with how this game works. I do have misgivings. It's definitely not perfect, but so far it's got its hooks deep into me and I can't see myself stopping playing it anytime soon. So let's talk about why that is. The most obvious element, and the one you're probably getting the strongest signal from what you're seeing on screen, is the overall vibe of the game. Zenless Zone Zero is dripping with style. To me, it's exactly what the character action genre has been missing for a long time. When I think of games like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, I think that they have stylish action, but they don't have the visual style to match. And Zenless Zone Zero excels in this regard. When you fight enemies, though they may be a little generic looking in their designs, the action itself is so highly stylized. It reminds me of almost as though if Arc System Works did a version of Dragon Ball FighterZ that was a 3D action game where you could just take on multiple foes at the same time and use dynamic camera angles and stuff like that to convey the sense of violence and action going on screen. When a character pops their ultimate in this game, it is so cool to watch. They use impact frames, which is a traditional term used in animation to kind of belie the fact that something powerful is occurring, right? Like when you see Goku hit someone with a Kamehameha and they go white right before they explode, stuff like that. That's what's called an impact frame, and HoYoVerse has made great use of this within Zenless Zone Zero to convey the power through which these attacks come out. There's also just a great sense of weight to every character and every impact. When you hit someone, it feels like you're making actual contact. The right use of kind of hit stop is done here. Masahiro Sakurai actually did a video on his almost defunct YouTube channel now where he talked about kind of the use of hit stop and how it makes actions in a game feel as though they're really occurring, as though you connect as the player with that action, with that attack. And HoYoVerse has done a great job of that here. The sense of kinesis, the sense of impact, the fighting actually feels really satisfying. When you nail an opponent with a powerful attack, you feel it. Whether that's through vibration in the DualSense controller if you're playing on PC, or if you're playing on PS5 rather. But it just absolutely nails the sense of fighting, and that's something that is surprisingly hard to do, and something that HoYoVerse, in my estimation, previously failed with. Genshin Impact, I didn't feel like the characters were appropriately tethered to the physical landscape. Jumps felt floaty, attacks felt kind of like they weren't happening in time with my button presses, and maybe other people's experience is different, but I noped out of that game really, really fast. So I'm surprised. I'm shocked, actually, at how much I like Zenless Zone Zero. I went in expecting to have a bad time. I went in expecting to see a visually arresting game that didn't hold my attention, and instead I got something that I'm now at least mildly obsessed with. I have been pulling characters, which is not something I usually do in free-to-play games. I have been trying to build out my squad. I've been going on story missions, and there's so much more to the game than just story missions. So let's talk about kind of the overall layout of Zenless Zone Zero so that you can understand what it is that you do, because there is a lot of complexity to this game, much more than I expected. And after 2 days with it, I'm still not fully grasping everything that's happening, but I have a better understanding of what the core of it is. And if you're a very casual observer like me, you might learn something. So when you start out Zenless Zone Zero, you choose one of two characters. Both are called Phaethon, and you can choose to be either a male character or a female character, and they're brother and sister. One is named Wise, the other is named Bell, and their job is to be what is known as a proxy. A proxy is an agent that directs operators through the hollows. The hollows are kind of this weird dimensional pocket space in which monsters exist, and if any person is in there too long, they too can become a monster. I haven't experienced any of the primary characters in the game becoming monsters yet. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. I don't know, and I won't spoil the story here, but as a proxy, you guide agents through the hollow to achieve their objectives. And there are exploratory missions in which you kind of travel down. It's weird to call it a Mario Party-esque board, but that's the best way I can describe it. It's a series of CRT TVs in which a little rabbit-type robot appears on the screen, and you guide it through these series of CRTs to find items, gather collectibles, and eventually land on spaces in which you must do battle with monsters. And when you do battle with these monsters, you have a set group of 3 agents. Now, these are characters that are either loaned to you to play during story missions, or you can use characters that you've obtained through the typical free-to-play gacha-style methods. And there are tons of those, which I'll get into later. But if you don't want to do that, you can just play with the characters provided to you, and they're really good characters. You start out with 3. There's Ambi, Billy, and Nicole. And Ambi is a sword wielder who uses electric type abilities. Billy, full name Billy Kid, which if you're looking at him on screen now is apparent to you why, uses 2 pistols. And then Nicole uses kind of a gravity well type of gun, that she can swing around as a melee weapon, but also shoot some pretty devastating projectiles out of. They're all cool characters. I like them a lot. I haven't met a character within Zenless Zone Zero that I dislike yet, though I'm sure that everybody will have favorites. There's a lot of variety in how the combat works, and I'm as shocked as you are that I'm saying all of this. I kind of expected that to be the entirety of the game. In my experience, free-to-play games are pretty shallow. They don't have a lot to do. You know, it's mostly about trying to get as much money out of the player as possible. But it does feel like HoYoVerse put a lot of effort into making Zenless Zone Zero just an enjoyable experience, whether you pay in or not. When you're not in a mission, your character, whether you chose Wise or Bell, is free to walk around kind of an open world area. It's very small. I would liken it to kind of a city in a PS3 game, but it's very well realized, beautifully animated, and very colorful, and I like that. So as you walk out, there are various things you can do. You can play arcade games. You can get a cup of coffee, which confers stat bonuses for the next mission you go on. You can get a daily scratcher, which again is another free-to-play staple, from a cute little dog that runs a booth right outside the video store that you run. And speaking of your video store, you can promote certain videos and try to run that business to grow it and get people to, actually rent videos from you, which gives you a little bit of in-game currency each day. So there are several things you can do. Later on, you even unlock the ability to travel to different areas. And though I've only played, as many hours as a weekend would allow while being a dad and having kids and doing life and working on other GVG projects in the meantime, I was able to unlock at least one more area. And that took me to a VR training center in which I was able to try out characters I've never played as before, as well as earn rewards for doing so. There's a lot in Zenless Zone Zero, and I'm really feeling like even after just a couple of days, I'm barely scratching the surface of it, because when you dive into menus, you find rewards for doing different activities, which reward you with polychromes and encrypted master tapes and stuff like that. There's lots of currencies, and that is probably where the most typical free-to-play trappings of any game come in. these currencies are everywhere, and there are loads of them, and they do different things, and at first it can feel very overwhelming. As somebody who doesn't play a lot of free-to-play games, I did find it to be a bit hard to parse initially. But as I played more, I started to understand what each currency did and how I could use them best, how I could use the currency the game was giving me to get better characters, improve the ones I already have, and continue on down the path of creating my favorite loadout. And I'm still a long way away from that. Fortunately, like I said, I've gotten to try every single character in the game just through the trials that are made available to every player. And I have to say, letting you play every single available character that you can only get, I assume, through in-game currency is an incredibly effective marketing tool, because each character plays very differently to the next. All of them have different specialties, whether that's damage or stun or ice or whatever. They all have kind of unique capabilities to match different styles of play. I tend to prefer characters that fight from up close, dodge, and are able to lay hurting on opponents quickly, whereas some others may prefer ranged characters or slower, heavier characters. Like there's a bear that wields just a huge weapon. He's incredibly slow, but he does lots of damage. I prefer more zippy, in and out type of characters, and getting to try them is probably the most effective way to get a player to want to purchase them. Now, as I understand it, not every character needs to be bought. Some are given to you. The first 3 that I mentioned earlier in the video, those are just given to you for free. You start out with those characters, and you can actually pool different characters, or the same characters, duplicate characters, and there are layers to what that does. One of my favorite free-to-play games ever is Dragon Ball Z Dokkan Battle. It's an iOS game. I've been playing it for a decade. I actually wrote about it a decade ago, and it's the only other time I've written about a free-to-play game. But I really loved that game, and how it handled duplicate characters was that it used those duplicates to enhance other characters that you have, and Zenless Zone Zero does the exact same thing. So when you get a duplicate of a character you already had, you actually gain the ability to unlock more skills for that character. It gives them passive boosts or additional attacks, or, different techniques that really change the way the character handles. And so far I've gotten a couple just through doing in-game quests, not having to pull, not having to search for signal or do any of those things. I've just been awarded certain characters as I've been playing. And I think that is just through quests like completing story missions, leveling up my rank within the game, doing the side quest stuff in the city out there. You can actually pick up side quests to explore different areas of the Hollow, or even just fight specific monsters as you go through. And those side quests let you just choose whoever you like. Whoever you already have in your party, you can swap them back and forth. Story quests also let you do the same thing, but I'm kind of a purist and I prefer to use the characters that I see in the cutscenes. And that's another thing that I think Zenless Zone Zero excels at. It has actual fully voiced dialogue, cutscenes, you name it. It feels like a quality production, like something that you would find in a packaged, prepaid game, if you will, not a free-to-play experience. The limits of my free-to-play experience these days are through Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis, and I feel like the production value of Zenless Zone Zero is much higher. I think that they are very different types of games, and PSO2 New Genesis is certainly a fun game in its own right, and it's presented very differently. The world is much larger in PSO2, but Zenless Zone Zero just feels like it has a level of polish that is missing from most free-to-play experiences. I wouldn't be surprised if this was a $39, $49 game that was just sold to you and you could pull characters, say, the same way you would in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, where you don't have to pay for the ability to do it. But the fact that this is free kind of makes it, well, a bit more complex and interesting in a way. If you're not a fan of free-to-play trappings, then you're not going to be a fan of them here, because Zenless Zone Zero does do them in the same way that most mobile games and other free-to-play offerings do. But I encourage you to take a look beyond that, because there's so much to this game. It's so intense to play moment to moment that when you hit a dodge and time slows and you start laying damage on enemies, it feels so good. And even the kind of moments that I thought I wouldn't like, the getting coffee and playing arcade games and doing side quests, is a great cooldown after doing a mission. And there's so much to the story of this game. It's so well presented that I find myself coming back just to find out what's going to happen to Faithin and the Cunning Hares and all the other main players within the story so far. I'm really enjoying this, and I didn't think I would. I truly thought that I was not going to like this. So I wanted to make this video because you might be in the same boat that I was in. You might have looked at this and just written it off as another free-to-play game that's not worth your time. And I'm not going to say that it will be, because your feelings about free-to-play stuff might be different than mine. But what I will say is this. If you're like me and you just haven't connected with any of HoYoVerse's previous games, you might want to give Zenless Zone Zero a try, especially if you like action games and real-time feedback. It's some of the best combat I've experienced in a game, and maybe even the best combat I've experienced in a game this year. So give it a shot. If you don't like free-to-play games, I strongly recommend you try Zenless Zone Zero. It is very restrained in terms of how they monetize the game. Lots of the monetization stuff is hidden in menus for people who want to find it. It's not thrusted in your face at every opportunity the way some other more aggressive games can be. I'm actually quite impressed with how HoYoVerse has focused on making Zenless Zone Zero a game first and a monetization vehicle second. It feels like something where they kind of know that the people who want to pay in are going to find the opportunities to do so, and the people who don't are just kind of left to play the game the way they'd like. And that's the way it should be. It's clear that HoYoVerse wanted to build something fun, and that they believe that if you enjoy it, you'll pay for the privilege of continuing to play it, that you'll invest yourself in the ecosystem of the game. I don't know if I'm going to do that yet. I've played a lot, and I've really enjoyed what I've played, but I'm not yet to the point where I feel like I'm going to spend real money to continue playing, and I don't have to. For the record, there's nothing requiring me to buy any additional credits or do anything. I can just keep grinding and earning in-game currency through playing quests or whatever, and use those to pull additional characters or do whatever you do with the in-game currency. There's nothing that makes me have to buy anything, and I don't see any incentive to yet. But what I can say is this. I did not expect to become a HoYoVerse fan in 2024, but after my experience with Zenless Zone Zero, I see that they can make an incredibly competent action game, one that is engaging and addictive and has a story to match, and that's enough for me. That's enough for me to keep playing this game, to see it through to wherever I end up with it. But for now, it is one of the most refreshing, exciting experiences I've had playing anything this year, and for that reason, I just hope you give it a try.